Have you ever felt that quiet pull inside you? The one that whispers, "This is what you're meant to do?" Sometimes passion doesn't come with applause. It begins in silence, in moments no one sees. There's a story I want to share today. It's about someone who loved to paint, but the world told them it was useless, impractical, a waste of time. Still, they couldn't stop. Late at night when everyone slept, they drew. Their hands spoke a language only their heart understood. One day, a teacher discovered those hidden drawings. What happened next changed everything. This story isn't just about art, it's about courage, the courage to stay true to yourself. Because sometimes winning isn't about being the best, it's about refusing to give up on what you love. There's something magical about discovering what makes your heart come alive. For some people, it's music. For others, it's building, cooking, or creating. For our storyteller, it was painting. Pure, quiet painting. From the first moment they touched a brush, something clicked. The world faded, and colors spoke louder than words. Each stroke was a whisper of truth, a glimpse of who they were inside. But passion often begins where logic ends. While others chased grades, medals, or titles, this person chased light, form, and feeling. They spent hours studying the way sunlight touched leaves. They painted emotions, not objects. Dreams, not rules. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about being honest. That's the beauty of passion. It doesn't ask for permission. It simply exists, waiting for you to notice. But here's the twist. Passion, especially when it's unconventional, is rarely celebrated early. When the world sees art, it often sees waste of time. When the world sees dreams, it often asks, but will it pay the bills? And so, our painter found themselves in a silent battle. They loved something deeply, yet felt they had to hide it. Because to love something that others don't value can be lonely. But loneliness is not always a curse. Sometimes it's the quiet space where authenticity grows. This story reminds us of something vital. Every passion starts small. Every spark needs shelter before it becomes fire. Many of us have been there, haven't we? Maybe you loved writing, but someone told you it's not practical. Maybe you wanted to sing, but fear drowned your voice. Maybe your dream was laughed at before it had a chance to speak. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. The painter's story is your story too. Because at its core, it's about daring to feel alive, even when no one else understands. Think about this. Most of the world's greatest creators began in solitude. They worked in corners, in basements, in the back of small rooms. Not because they wanted to hide, but because that's where passion feels safe to grow. Passion doesn't bloom under spotlight. It grows in shadows, watered by persistence. Our painter knew that. They didn't paint for likes, followers, or fame. They painted because it was the only way to breathe fully. They found meaning in each quiet hour, in the rhythm of color and motion. And that's something we can all learn from. We often think success starts with visibility, but in truth, success starts with connection. Connection to what matters most to us. When you find that thing that makes you lose track of time, that's where you belong. It doesn't matter if no one claps yet. It doesn't matter if others don't see the point. What matters is that it feels right to you. Our painter's love for art wasn't loud, it was steady. And steady passion always outlasts noise. So if you're listening to this, maybe ask yourself, what's your brush? What's that one thing you'd still do, even if no one noticed? Because that's where your truth lives. And maybe, like the painter, your quiet dedication is leading you somewhere beautiful. Somewhere you can finally say, this is me. This is what I was born to do. Every dream meets resistance. It's almost like the universe tests how much you truly want it. For our painter, that test came early, and it came from the people they loved most. Their family wanted the best for them, or at least what they believed was best. Art is a hobby, they said, not a career. Those words echoed through dinners, through long conversations filled with concern. They weren't said with cruelty, but with fear, fear of uncertainty. Because loving art is one thing, but living from art, that's another story. So they were pushed toward something safe: math, science, business, subjects that promise stability, not creativity. And little by little, the paintbrush felt heavier in their hands. They began to question themselves. Maybe they're right, they thought. Maybe I should be practical. But here's the truth: practicality is often just another word for fear: fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of being different. And that fear can silence even the loudest dreams. The painter's world grew quieter. The bright colors they once loved started to fade. They stopped painting during the day, afraid someone might see. They hid their sketches under books and assignments. Every time they looked at them, they felt both joy and guilt. Joy for what they loved, guilt for not letting it live. If you've ever felt torn between passion and expectation, you know that pain. It's the kind of ache that lingers, a quiet heaviness behind every smile. But that pain also teaches something important. It shows you what you can't ignore, because the things we try hardest to hide are often the ones we need most. For our painter, silence became their sanctuary. When everyone else slept, they returned to their canvas. The world outside was asleep, but their heart was wide awake. They painted not to prove anything, but to feel alive again. And that's a kind of courage most people never see. They didn't rebel with words, they rebelled with colors. Each stroke said what they couldn't say aloud: I'm still here. I still believe in this. That's what resilience looks like: quiet, steady, and deeply personal. And maybe that's something you can relate to, because so many of us carry secret dreams, dreams we whisper to ourselves when no one's listening, dreams we tuck away because they don't fit the mold. But molds were never meant for hearts. And if you keep squeezing yourself into one, eventually, you'll lose your shape. So maybe the painter's story is a mirror for all of us, a reminder that love for what you do is worth protecting, even in silence. You don't need permission to keep going. You just need to start, again and again, even when no one believes. The painter didn't have an audience, they didn't have validation, but they had a vision. And sometimes that's enough, because every masterpiece begins as an act of quiet defiance. So if your dream feels small right now or hidden, remember this: your growth doesn't need noise, it needs commitment. And the people who once doubted you, they're just part of the story, not the ending, just the background. Because what defines your path isn't their fear, it's your persistence. Our painter kept painting one night at a time. They turned doubt into discipline and fear into focus. And without realizing it, they were building something powerful: belief. Belief in themselves, belief in their gift, belief that even in a world of rules, there's always room for color. There's a certain kind of strength that comes from doing what you love in silence. It's not the loud, confident kind you see in movies. It's quiet. It's personal. It's the kind that builds you from the inside out. Our painter lived in that silence. By day, they were a student, doing everything expected of them. By night, they became who they truly were. When the world went to sleep, the room came alive with color. The sound of the brush against canvas was their secret heartbeat. Every stroke felt like breathing, every shadow, a confession. No one knew what was happening behind that door. And yet, something beautiful was growing there: discipline. Because doing something you love in secret teaches you something rare: consistency without applause. You learn to keep going even when no one notices. You learn that passion doesn't need validation to be real. Each night was a promise to themselves: I won't stop, even when tired, even when unsure, even when it felt pointless. And that's what makes silent work powerful. It's not driven by reward, it's fueled by love. People often talk about motivation, but motivation fades. Discipline, born from quiet love, that's what lasts. Our painters, secret hours became their greatest teacher. They learned how to focus, how to feel, how to turn frustration into form. They failed many times, but no one saw the failure, so there was no shame. Just progress, inch by inch, color by color. This is something we often forget. We think growth must be public. We think success must be shared. But true growth happens privately, in moments no one claps for: the late nights, the missed sleep, the quiet doubts that whisper, is this worth it? And yet, the answer always comes back as a soft yes, because the act of doing, of creating, is already a victory. If you've ever worked on something without recognition, you know how heavy that can feel. But you also know how freeing it is. When no one's watching, there's no fear of judgment. You're free to experiment, to fail, to start over. That's where authenticity lives, in the freedom to be imperfect. Our painter found comfort there, in that small, dimly lit room. They weren't hiding anymore. They were blooming, quietly, steadily, beautifully. And that's what makes this part of the story so special. Because silence isn't the absence of sound, it's the presence of self. It's where you learn to hear your own voice again. And sometimes you need to go quiet to truly listen. The painter didn't know it, but every night they painted, they were preparing for a moment that would one day change everything. But more importantly, they were preparing to meet themselves, their truest, most honest self. That's the hidden gift of secret work. You don't just create art, you create resilience. You don't just build skill, you build identity. And when the time comes to step into the light, you'll be ready. Because you've already faced the hardest part: doing it without applause. So, if you're listening right now and working quietly on something you love, keep going. You might feel unseen, but you're not unnoticed by life. Every late night, every small step, every moment of doubt you push through, it counts. It shapes you in ways you can't yet see. Someday, the world will see what you've built in silence. But even before that, know this: the quiet work you do now is already proof that you're becoming who you're meant to be. Sometimes, the universe gives us a small moment that changes everything. It often arrives when we least expect it: quiet, unannounced, but powerful. For our painter, that moment came one ordinary afternoon. They were cleaning up their sketches after class, thinking no one noticed. But someone did. Their teacher, a kind soul with eyes that could see beyond the surface. The teacher picked up one of the drawings, paused, and smiled. "What is this?" they asked softly. "Did you make this?" The painter froze, heart pounding. They nodded, unsure of what would happen next. But instead of scolding, the teacher said something they would never forget: "You have a gift. Don't hide it." It was just a few words, but it felt like sunlight breaking through clouds. After that day, everything felt different. The teacher quietly submitted one of the painter's works to a local art contest. The painter didn't even know. They were too busy doubting themselves. Weeks passed. Life continued as usual: study, chores, painting at night. Until one morning, A letter arrived. The school called the painter's name during assembly. Confused, they stepped forward. And then they heard it. First prize. For a moment, time stopped. Applause filled the room. Faces turned. People who had never noticed them before were now watching. The same hands that had once trembled in secret now held a certificate of recognition. It was a strange feeling, both unreal and deeply grounding. All those quiet nights suddenly made sense. The hours of solitude, the self-doubt, the endless sketching. They had led here. But more than the prize itself, it was the validation that mattered. Not external approval, but the realization. Maybe I was right to believe in myself. This part of the story teaches us something profound about timing. Sometimes we keep working in silence, wondering if anyone will ever see. But then, out of nowhere, life whispers, "I see you." And that's enough to reignite everything inside. Recognition doesn't always mean fame or money. Sometimes it's just one person, a mentor, a friend, a stranger, who notices your effort. And that single moment of being seen can shift your entire path. The teacher's small act changed the painter's world. It gave them confidence to keep going, to finally step out of the shadows. We all need that kind of moment, don't we? That one spark of encouragement to remind us that what we do matters. But here's the thing. Those moments don't come unless we keep doing the work. If the painter had given up, the teacher would have found nothing to discover. So yes, opportunity often feels like luck. But luck usually finds those who keep showing up, even when no one's watching. If you're listening right now, maybe you're waiting for your own teacher moment. It could come tomorrow, or months from now, or maybe from someone you least expect. But it will come. If you keep creating, keep showing up for yourself. The world can't recognize what it can't see. So don't stop sharing your light, even if it feels small right now. The painter's story reminds us, what's hidden isn't forgotten. It's simply waiting for the right eyes to see it. And when that happens, your effort, your persistence, your quiet love, they all rise to the surface. Like sunlight finding its way through a window, it always does. So keep painting your life, even in the dark. Because one day someone will open the door, and the world will finally see what you've been creating all along. Recognition is a strange thing. It arrives suddenly, but it's built slowly. For our painter, that moment of recognition was both shocking and healing. When they heard their name called for the first prize, it didn't feel real. They looked around, unsure if it was truly them. The applause, the leets, the smiles, everything felt distant. But inside, something shifted. A quiet voice whispered, "You did it." That simple moment carried years of unspoken struggle. It wasn't just a prize, it was proof. Proof that their silent nights mattered. For the first time, their art wasn't hidden under books or fear. It was out in the open, seen, valued, celebrated. People who once told them to stop now came forward to congratulate. Their family, once skeptical, now looked at them differently. And that's the irony of success. Sometimes people believe only after you succeed, but even that has its own beauty. Because forgiveness often begins where understanding starts. The painter didn't feel anger, they felt peace. They realized that those who doubted them weren't enemies. They were simply afraid of dreams that looked uncertain. And now, seeing the result, they began to understand. That day became a turning point, not just in the painter's life, but in everyone's around them. The teacher smiled quietly from the back of the room. No big speech, no attention needed, just pride. Because mentors know that recognition is never just about the prize. It's about the growth that happens before it. Behind every success story, there are countless invisible hours. The failures, the frustration, the solitude. They all lead here. And when the moment finally comes, it's not luck, it's accumulation, accumulated courage, patience, and persistence. That's what true recognition honors. Not the outcome, but the journey. After the contest, the painter continued to create, but something had changed inside them. They no longer painted just to escape, they painted to express. They started believing that maybe art wasn't useless after all. Maybe it was a way to connect, to communicate what words couldn't. People started asking questions. How did you do it? What inspired you? And the painter smiled. Because the truth was simple, they never stopped. They worked even when no one watched. They painted when it felt hopeless. They stayed consistent when doubt was louder than hope. That's the real story behind every overnight success. It's never overnight. It's years of invisible effort meeting one visible opportunity. And this is where the lesson deepens for all of us. Recognition feels amazing, but it shouldn't be the goal. If you create only to be seen, you'll lose joy when the lights fade. But if you create because it fulfills you, recognition becomes a bonus, not a need. Our painter learned that lesson in the most beautiful way. They realized success wasn't the trophy. It was the freedom to keep creating without guilt. It was the ability to look in the mirror and say, I was right to believe. So, when you reach your own milestone, remember this. Celebrate it. Enjoy it. But don't let it define you. Because recognition is temporary, but purpose is not. Purpose is what keeps you going when applause stops. Purpose is what makes the next painting, the next song, the next dream possible. And maybe that's what true success really means. Not being seen by everyone, but being known by yourself. For our painter, that moment of recognition didn't end the story. It only began a new one rooted in confidence, love, and gratitude. Because once you've been seen, you learn to see others too. And that's how art and life keeps expanding. There's something powerful about being seen, truly seen. Not for who people think you should be, but for who you really are. For our painter, that moment finally arrived. The recognition from the art contest opened more than just doors. It opened hearts. Family members who once doubted began to understand. They saw not just the art, but the dedication behind it. They saw the sleepless nights, the quiet persistence, the love poured into every color. And suddenly, what once seemed useless became meaningful. This is the beauty of understanding. It transforms judgment into respect. But here's the interesting thing about acceptance. It doesn't change who you are. It reveals who you've been all along. The painter didn't need to become someone new. They just needed the world to finally catch up. And that's something we all experience in our own way. When you walk your path long enough, the world eventually sees your truth. At first, they question it. Then, they resist it. But one day, they recognize it. That's the rhythm of growth. Slow, quiet, but unstoppable. The painter's story teaches us that validation is sweet, but it's not the destination. It's a reminder, a gentle nod from life saying, you were right to keep going. After that, something even more beautiful happened. The painter began to inspire others. You see, courage is contagious. When people witness someone standing strong in their truth, it gives them permission to do the same. Friends started painting again. Younger students began dreaming bigger. The ripple effect was real, because every act of authenticity invites another. And this is how change spreads, not through speeches or rules, but through example. Our painter didn't have to preach. They just kept creating. And that in itself became a message louder than words. Sometimes the best way to teach courage is simply to live it, to show that even quiet determination has power. The family, now proud, began to support their journey. They attended exhibitions, encouraged new projects, and shared their pride openly. The same voices that once said, "You can't," now said, "We always knew you could." And while it's easy to smile at that irony, there's also tenderness in it. Because change doesn't happen through argument, it happens through proof, through consistency, through showing up again and again. And that's what the painter did. They didn't push anyone to believe, they just kept showing what belief looked like. Eventually, belief became visible. There's a lesson here for all of us. When you stay true to yourself, even when no one claps, you're building quiet evidence. Evidence that one day speaks louder than any defense ever could. It tells the world, this is who I am. And I'm not sorry for it. That's the real victory. Not the award, not the applause, but the self-assurance that grows within. Because once you know your worth, you stop needing others to confirm it. And ironically, that's when they start to see it too. The painter's life became lighter after that, not because everything was easy, but because they no longer carried doubt. Their art flowed freely, their heart felt aligned, and from that alignment came peace, the kind that doesn't depend on outcomes. That's what happens when you live from authenticity. You stop chasing approval and start creating meaning. You stop waiting for permission and start leading by example. So, if you've been walking your own lonely path, wondering if anyone will ever understand, keep going. Because one day they will, and when they do, it won't just validate you. It will remind them what belief looks like. And that's how you turn your passion into purpose, by living it unapologetically until the world catches up. Every story has a lesson, and this one is no different. Our painter's journey wasn't about art alone. It was about purpose. It was about what it truly means to be born to win. You see, winning isn't always about trophies or applause. Sometimes it's about persistence. Sometimes it's about doing what you love, even when no one understands. Our painter didn't win because of luck. They won because they refused to stop. They listened to their heart louder than the noise around them. That's what real victory looks like. Quiet, steady, and full of heart. It's easy to think success is about being chosen. But the truth is, success is about choosing yourself. Choosing to try again when it's hard. Choosing to trust your path, even when it's unclear. And choosing to stay kind, even when the world doubts you. That's the essence of being born to win. It's not a privilege, it's a mindset. It's a belief that what you love has value and that you have something to give. Our painter learned this truth the hard way. They faced rejection, silence, and loneliness. But each of those things shaped their resilience. Without the struggle, the victory wouldn't have meant as much. Because ease doesn't teach strength, resistance does. Think about your own story for a moment. Where have you been told to stop? What dream have you buried because someone said it wasn't realistic? Maybe that dream still waits for you, quietly, patiently, and maybe it's time to pick it up again. The world often celebrates outcomes, but life rewards effort. The act of trying, of daring, of staying true. That's where fulfillment lives. Our painter didn't know how things would turn out. They just knew they couldn't give up, and that made all the difference. Because when you work from love, the outcome always finds its way. Passion has a strange kind of gravity. It pulls the right opportunities closer. It attracts the right people, the right timing, the right energy. But it starts with one decision: to keep going, to believe, even when the evidence isn't there yet, to trust, even when others don't. That's what turns dreamers into doers, and doers into winners. Our painter's story ends with more than recognition. It ends with peace, the kind that comes from alignment, from knowing they didn't compromise who they were. They proved that following your heart isn't foolish, it's brave. And bravery doesn't mean being fearless. It means feeling fear and choosing to move anyway. That's what makes life meaningful. Those small acts of courage. Not loud, not grand, but honest. And honesty, in its purest form, is power. When you live from authenticity, you inspire without trying. Your actions become your message. Your life becomes your art. And maybe that's the greatest victory of all, to live in a way that reminds others they can too. So if you're listening right now, wondering where your path is leading, remember this. You were never meant to fit into someone else's plan. You were born to create your own. Your journey might be quiet, your progress invisible, but it matters. Keep showing up, keep creating, keep believing, because you're not waiting to be chosen. You already are. The fact that you care, that you try, that you love, that's the proof. And that's what makes you too, born to win. So, what does this story teach us? It's not just about art or winning a prize. It's about believing in yourself when no one else does. It's about doing what you love, even when the world doesn't understand. True success isn't measured by fame or approval. It's measured by your courage to keep going. The painter didn't win because they were lucky. They won because they didn't quit. They followed their heart, worked in silence, and believed in their passion. And so can you. Whatever your dream is, don't stop. Keep creating, keep pushing forward, even when it feels hard. Because when you stay true to yourself,